Hi guys, the Metal Maniac back again, and in this video I'm going to be doing a list of my top 10 favorite animated TV shows. Now, a while back I did a list of my top 10 favorite TV shows overall, and this is sort of like a offshoot of that video. The reason why I want to do sort of like another similar video is because um, with my top 10 favorite TV shows overall, mixed live action animated TV shows. But I want to do this, top 10 favorite animated TV shows because the list compared to my overall list of my overall favorite TV shows is actually almost completely different. And it's just an interesting video idea in my opinion. So without further ado, let's just get into it. All right, number 10. Number 10 is actually the first anime on here. There's not many anime in here, like maybe a few, but the first one is Ghost Stories. Yeah, this one is it's an interesting one because it didn't start off the way the way most people know it as. There are actually two different versions. There is the original Japanese version, and then there's the American version. Now the original Japanese version is not really it doesn't deviate from horror too much. It's basically almost straight up horror, whereas the American version is basically a horror comedy. And the American voice actors basically this very rarely happens when when anime gets translated into English or they bring in the English voice actors. This very rarely happens, but the English voice actors actually got permission of full reign to do whatever they wanted with the show. So like a lot of the comedy does not come from the script. A lot of the comedy is literally just them basically freestyling and making up lines themselves rather than reading from an actual script. So I think that makes the funny moments even funnier, knowing that the voice actors themselves really came up with a lot of the stuff on their own instead of writers doing it for them. Anyway, so this show is about a group of middle schoolers who have to deal with ghosts in their school. Basically, in the beginning of the show, there's this construction site that's going on, and they actually someone accidentally bulldozes over this ancient, like a couple of ancient statues that are like that sort of. I think they either housed the spirits or like they were used to keep them at bay or something. But whatever, evil spirits get unleashed and actually start haunting these group of friends' school that they're at. And at one point, the cat, they're a cat, I can't remember the cat's name in the show, but the cat actually gets possessed by one of these evil spirits. And that's where the show actually gets funnier and sort of like more entertaining because at that point, I guess the demon wanted to, to attack the kids, whatever. But unfortunately, the whatever happened, the demon got weakened or something, and he couldn't unpossess the cat or do much in the cat's body. So then it just is like the continuous storyline of these group of kids trying to fight off all these other evil spirits, trying to find a way to basically each one has a different each spirit has a different way of being vanquished or put at peace. They're trying to do that while also trying to figure out how to get the cat unpossessed. And the characters themselves are really interesting. A lot of the characters and even the ghosts themselves are sort of like a parody of different like characters within the horror genre. As for the main cast themselves, you get let's see, you get the youngest brother of the secondary main character, who is basically the scaredy cat of the group. And whenever he like sees something even mildly like not just mildly scary, he just goes completely like He just goes into complete mental breakdown mode and just starts like babbling uncontrollably, incomprehensibly. Like he just utters complete nonsense and basically just like freaks out. You get For some reason I remember everything, like even though I've seen this a lot of times, I remember mostly everything but the characters' names for some reason. I honestly don't know why. But then you get the bigger sister of one of the main characters, who is basically the brains of the group. Basically figures out all the ways to vanquish the evil spirits and stuff, and yeah, is pretty much the smartest person in the group. You get the typical nerdy guy of the group who basically, most of the time when he figures stuff out, it's usually either by accident or coincidence. And probably I'd say the blandest character is definitely this guy. He he's there. He doesn't do much. I mean, he does a lot, but to me, he's the least interesting. And then you get the psychotic character there. Forget her name. Oh, they say the names on the back. Oh, I missed that. Which one is she? No, that's not it. Actually, no, I don't think they have the names of all the characters on here. Anyway, basically, she's basically probably, she has the best one-liners, but also at the same time, she's the most annoying character. Basically, she's sort of a crazy religious radical kind of character who basically basically the annoying, overly radical Christian type sort of stereotype. And yeah, again, she's kind of annoying with that, but also she has some of the best and funniest one-liners as well. And also the ghosts themselves. Like I said, each ghost has sort of like the sort of a play on the stereotype, or sort of like it's basically sort of like a parody slash stereotype of different horror genres and different horror ideas that's been done over the decades. For example, there's this one episode with the doll. Yeah, there's a haunted doll episode, and that's really interesting. So it's sort of like a parody of like Chucky, the Child's Play stuff, as well as I don't think the Conjuring stuff was out at that point, but it's basically the killer doll sort of a sort of a killer doll type sort of like parody. And that's like one of probably my favorite episode. It's just so it gets meta too a little bit. Anyway, but yeah, it's just a really cool sort of like horror comedy kind of show, and yeah, it's at my number 10 spot. Actually, hold on. I'm actually gonna read off the description. Now, I'm not gonna read off the description for everyone on here, because there's a couple on here that either don't have descriptions on the back, or the descriptions aren't very good. But anyway, can school have too much spirit? When nearby construction disturbs a spiritual resting place, its disgruntled denizens do what any supernatural being would do after a rude awakening. They terrorize the local school. And that means it's up to a scruffy band of young ghost hunters to expel their satanic schoolmates before everyone gets sent to permanent detention. Meet Satsuki, her crybaby brother, the restless class stud, and the nerd, and the physical researcher, and born again Christian, and a cat who gets sorry, hold on. A born again Christian and a resentful demon possessed by a cat. Sorry, for some reason it seems like they just translated translated into English very poorly, so that's why it's kind of hard to read because some stuff isn't the sentence aren't put together quite right. Anyway, um, where was I? Oh yeah, and a resentful demon possessed a cat in the funniest, scariest school you've ever enrolled in. But yeah, awesome show. All right, number 9. Number 9 is Star Wars Clone Wars. Yeah, definitely a lot better than that really dumb remake called Star Wars The Clone Wars, which had an even worse sort of continuation series called Star Wars Rebels. Was it Rebels or was it? I know there was at least 2 continuations of Star Wars The Clone Wars, but anyway. Yeah, Star Wars Clone Wars is one of the best animated shows of all time. Now, for those who are unaware, this was a micro series. There were only 2 seasons. I don't know how many episodes there were in total. I'll have to go back and check. But there weren't that many. And a lot of the episodes of the first season are actually really, really short. Also, this actually takes place in between Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom... No, sorry. After Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, but before Attack of... No, I'm wrong. I was thinking wrongly. It takes place after Attack of the Clones, but before Revenge of the Sith. There we go. And it's basically what happens in between those movies. I think there was actually a comic series, basically a continuation of the show after the show ended. Or was it while the show was going on? I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, anytime I watch the Star Wars franchise, I always, after, episode 2, I watch Star Wars Clone Wars, first and second seasons, and then watch episode 3, because I think you get a better experience when you watch the franchise that way. Yeah, you get some really cool character designs, that, honestly, when this first came out, when this actually originally aired, for whatever reason, I missed the show entirely, because I took one look at the overall animation and character designs, and I'm like, this is weird. I don't know what I was thinking back then, but I love the designs now. They're, I think he was either the director or the designer, but he was, the main guy who was involved with the Samurai Jack. Yeah, really cool. Also, I don't have I own the second season, I just don't have it with me right here, right now. But, I think the second season is where stuff ramps up even more and is the best of the 2. Not to say that this isn't good. But, yeah, General Grievous, is the highlight of season 2, in my opinion. I'd say probably, Asajj Ventress is the highlight of season 1. But yeah, just very awesome TV show. Alright, next up. Number 8. Number 8 is Spider-Man the Animated Series, the original from the 90s. Yeah, a lot of people sort of, I don't know, not really ignore this one, but sort of, it gets pushed back a little, and it gets pushed out of the spotlight a little, because when you're talking about animated superhero shows from the 90s, people either go for Batman the Animated Series or X-Men the Animated Series. Those are awesome, but I feel like this kind of gets sort of pushed to the side a bit, when talking about, these kind of superhero shows from the 90s. Now, unlike Batman, the animated series, or X-Men, the animated series, this does have sort of a thing where the episodes are basically hit or miss. Some are good, some are forgettable, but the episodes that are good are absolutely amazing. And you get some of the most definitive on-screen versions of characters. In my opinion, you get the definitive version of Cletus Cassidy / Carnage. You get the on-screen version. You get the definitive on-screen version of Mysterio. The definitive on-screen version of Black Cat. Shocker. Just a whole bunch of characters that I think are the definitive versions that are, from the comics onto the screen. And yeah, I do like Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy slash Carnage in the second Venom movie, but I don't think they portrayed either Cletus Cassidy or Carnage that accurately. I think there was a lot of lost in translation stuff going on there, where they did service for the movie for the most part, but I don't feel they quite got that character really accurate for that much. But like I said, for live action, it's serviceable. But to me, the only on screen accurate version is the version of Cletus Cassidy slash Carnage from the show. Also, there's some different, like for example, there's actually some difference in between the storylines of this and the comics. Now, for the most part, it is pretty the storylines are pretty accurate to the comic series, but there are some differences. First off, first off, the Clone Wars saga. In this one, the Clone Wars saga is slightly changed, but the thing that stands out the most about near the end of the Clone Saga. There we go, not Clone Wars. That's Star Wars, but and near the end of the Clone Saga, Spider Carnage is created. Now, Spider Carnage is, of course, a combination of the Carnage symbiote and Spider-Man. Now, in the comics, the person who becomes Spider Carnage is actually Spider-Man himself, not Spider-Man. The clone Ben Reilly. That's a version of Spider-Man. But in this show, it's not actually Ben Reilly. It is Spider-Man himself, but it's a Spider-Man from a different reality. It's not even a clone. It's the actual Peter Parker from another reality instead of the clone Ben Reilly becoming Spider Carnage. So, yeah, mostly accurate, but there are some differences, some plot differences. Also, another thing that I really think is kind of dumb is their censoring of guns. Now, Batman the Animated Series actually had guns, the policemen and stuff like that. They didn't shoot people, maybe once or something, but they didn't really shoot, actually hit anyone, or at least it wasn't, obvious that they did. They did some editing, but in this one they removed the guns entirely and gave the policemen, get this, futuristic laser guns. And the main thing here, the main place this takes place in is, at the time, modern day New York in the 90s. Yeah, futuristic laser guns in the 90s for the police is kind of dumb. And the whole thing is they were trying to, firearms or, you can't show that in a kid's film. Yet they give them lasers, which one is stupid because, again, futuristic, but it's in the modern setting. And secondly, there's still firearms. Yeah, sure, they're more fantasy-based firearms that don't exist, but guns exist, lasers exist to a certain, not the lasers they show in fantasy for the most part, but lasers do exist. So it's just kind of stupid how they censored it. It's just give them laser guns. But it doesn't really make sense story-wise or logical-wise. But anyway, yeah, so going back, there are some issues that pop up here and there, but for the most part, it's still a really good show. Alright. Number 7. Number 7 is the second anime on here, and that's Soul Eater. Soul Eater is a very interesting one. I think it has a really cool and unique premise to it. Basically, there's this academy. This doesn't take place. This takes place in basically sort of a fantasy world. It's its own sort of in-world thing. It's not sort of it doesn't really connect to anything. That's why I think it's its own contained fantasy-driven universe, which I think is really cool. Basically, there's this academy for warriors, I guess. No, they're called weapons meisters, but they're what it is in this world, there are certain people sort of inherently born with the power to transform into a mystical weapon. At the same time, there are also other people that are inherently, born with the ability to master these weapons that the people transform into. So there's the weapon and the weapons meister, and there's this academy built, run by the Grim Reaper himself, to train these people to fight off basically evil entities. And so there's always a pairing where one is the weapons meister and one is the mythical weapon. And so the whole idea is that they work together, and eventually when they graduate, the person who is the mythical weapon basically gets elected as the newest weapon for the Grim Reaper himself to use to defeat evil. But also you have this sort of main antagonist who used to be a student there, but basically went all power hungry, and his fear of death basically made him seek out to gain ultimate power, and he literally just killed everyone and started eating their souls and basically turned into this creature called a Kishin. And so he awakens because of these other these groups, this group that was formed, and they have to go defeat him before he basically awakens enough to where he basically almost not destroys all of humanity, but basically makes everyone go completely insane. Because the main villain is interesting that he doesn't show up till way later in the series, but he doesn't actually physically do much. He's sort of a villain where his power comes in the form of extreme mental manipulation. Like, his power is literally just basically driving people insane and basically ruining them from their mind, from the inside of their mind without. And so basically, destroying them from the inside out, basically, in this sort of a way. And so it's just a very interesting story plot. Also, you get some of the really, really cool characters. I think the most notable ones is definitely the son of the Grim Reaper. He's basically not a neat freak, but he basically has an obsession with everything having to be perfect in terms of just shaping wise, or for example, he can't have anything that's not symmetrically shaped 100% right. Like for example, he sees that every picture in his house is tilted, even just the slightest, and he has to compulsively go and put everything perfectly and stuff like that. He basically has a weird compulsive disorder that makes him feel like everything has to be symmetrically accurate. So he's a pretty interesting character, but I think that's really interesting because despite his fault and despite his compulsive behavior, he's able to overcome that eventually and sort of work with the rest of the team. And then you have probably, I think, what are supposed to be the two main characters, Maka and Soul. Maka is the weapons meister and Soul is the magical weapon. And they have a really cool story arc. And I'm not going to go into detail because there's a lot of stuff that would be basically spoilers for the story. But needless to say, this is definitely a must watch. All right. Number 6. Number 6 is one that I show that I grew up with, and that is the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. It still holds up surprisingly well. This is a show that I think started around the early 2000s and ended in 2006. For those of you who are unaware, for whatever reason, even though most people should know of this show, basically the plot is there's these two kids, Billy and Mandy. Billy being an absolute idiot, and then Mandy being just sort of the the logical one of the group, basically, and just sort of being just basically a moody, sort of edgy kid, I guess you could say. Um, the Grim Reaper comes out in the first episode to reap the soul of their very old dying hamster, but they don't want that to happen. So Mandy actually challenges Grim to, I guess, a game where if they win, they keep the Grim Reaper as like a servant forever, and if the Grim Reaper wins, he just takes the soul of the hamster. Of course, Grim Reaper loses, and he is forced to serve them for all of eternity, or at least as long as they live. Um, and from then on, there's just wacky hijinks ensues. Each episode is sort of it's connected, but also some stuff that's not connected as well. But Yeah, just a really good show. Now, this is a show that ended prematurely, mainly because of studio meddling. Basically, around 2006, Cartoon Network got a new, I guess, manager or head guy or whatever. And this guy, even though like a lot of these, creators were like deep into their shows already and like had everything was going, well and stuff. This guy apparently, I don't know his name, I don't remember who he was, but the new guy in charge basically was just like, I don't like any of you guys. You're all fired. I'm gonna hire my own people. Yeah, your shows are, but I'm gonna cancel your shows. I'm gonna fire literally everyone in this group and just basically hire my own guys. And so this show was canceled because some asshole in charge decided to just ruin everybody's career, just so he could get his personal guys in the company. Or I don't know the entire story, but I'm just paraphrasing. It's basically the short, condensed version of what happened. But it's interesting if you want to learn more about what happened to the shows like this under Cartoon Network at the time. Definitely go research it for yourselves on your own time. But yeah, great show. All right, number 5. Number 5 is I couldn't pick between the two, so I had to put both. Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate. Hellsing came first. Hellsing Ultimate is sort of the reboot of sorts. They're the same show but slightly different. For the overall synopsis, basically, the show takes place in London in this mansion, or there's this group based in this mansion, and it's called the Hellsing Organization, and it's basically a monster hunting organization. Basically, it's sort of a secret society, not secret society, but a co-ops organization that basically hunts down any evil supernatural creatures that are plaguing humanity, and it's run by the great great granddaughter of course, legendary vampire slayer Van Helsing himself. And basically, I don't know. It's confusing. Not confusing. It's difficult to describe the two completely different shows because while they're technically from the same manga series, they have a completely different storyline. I'll get to that in just a second, but the main characters basically, of course, Victoria Wingate. What's her name again? It's complicated. Hold on. I don't remember. I'll just say Winsgate Van Helsing or Winsgate Helsing because that's her name's kind of long, but the main person in charge has all these guys hired and stuff, but I guess it wasn't enough. So she actually inherits like when her father dies, I guess she inherits a really good sort of like playing card in terms of the whole sort of like army that she's built. The character of Alucard, who is basically a servant to the Hellsing organization after he was basically captured and recruited to be their ultimate weapon against evil. Basically evil against evil, and only evil can triumph over evil type situation. Now, um, he is of course the most powerful vampire in the entire world in that series. Um, he's an interesting character because it's sort of hinted that he might. Now, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it's hinted that he's not quite who he seems, or maybe he is who he seems. But he has a very cool sort of like power set, basically. Sort of a unique way of portraying a vampire's powers. He has different levels, basically locked and unlocked. Like, he has. I guess they're not like naturally there. His levels are basically like hindering his full power. That was sort of like a spell designed by the Helsing organization to keep him under control. But under certain commands, he could unlock certain levels of his abilities. I can't remember exactly how many levels there are, but when it gets to level 1 or 0, he is at his full power. And I think it only happens a few times within the series, and especially towards the end. But it's just a weird but really cool way of portraying a vampire's power, and also sort of weird and cool way of portraying how that power could be captured and used to one's advantage. And then you get the side character, or I guess technically main character, Cirrus Victoria, who was a former policewoman that basically got shot in the line of duty, and got saved by Alucard, who turned her into a vampire, and she's sort of his sidekick now. But yeah, it's really cool. Now, the storyline, like I said, is kind of hard to explain considering that it spins off in two separate directions. The original storyline here in the first version is basically based on what already existed of the manga series, or maybe what didn't exist yet, because I don't know if the manga series that this is based on was even, I don't know if it was out yet, or only parts. I know at least parts of it were out, if not any at all, so they had to go with their own storyline. That's where this comes in. Basically, this one, Hellsing Ultimate, is basically after the series was completed, so they had a lot more accuracy with the story and where it went and the characters and stuff. Also, it's just a lot more gory and bloody and just a lot more action packed overall. And I think so. I can't remember off to look it up again, but I think they actually brought back all the original voice actors from the original version to do their voices again in Hellsing Ultimate. But yeah, just a really cool series. And yeah, sure, this one is definitely more accurate and a lot more accurate, a lot more brutal, a lot more bloody. But I suggest you check out both. This one first, and then this one. It's just a lot better experience than just watching one or the other. Yeah. All right. Number 4. Number 4 is Corpse Party. This is actually the last anime on this list. This is actually, I wish there was more of this. This is actually a mini series, a four episode mini series. That was actually based on an old game, an old 8-bit styled horror game called Corpse Party as well. Now, I'm not going to read the back of this because the description is not, it doesn't really describe the show that well. And I think a lot of these anime, like the English version, like English descriptions on the back, are like either poorly translated or just lazily translated. I don't know. Or lazily done, I should say. It's either or, maybe both. The plot here is that there was these group of friends that are in the school, and basically one of the friends is about to move, and everyone's very upset about this because they're all a group of friends, and so they try to perform this sort of symbolic ritual, not really a ritual, but a more symbolic-esque ritual, basically to have them be friends even if they're far apart. Now, of course, someone messes up, and everything goes to shit. Everything just sort of crumbles around them. They fall through the floor, and when they wake up, they're in a completely different school. Now, reversing back here, years and years before the school that they were in was there was a school called Heavenly Host Academy. And, a series of absolute brutal murders happened there. And it was closed down. And then bulldozed, completely just demolished. But then, of course, some idiot had the bright idea to build another school on top of the same area that school used to be. And, of course, the land is still very much haunted. But, so these guys wake up, and they're in the what is supposed to be demolished school. That's, again, not there in their reality. And then they find out that they're not in their own reality. They're in a pocket dimension created by the vengeful spirits that were killed in the massacre of the previous school. And so basically, one by one, they get killed off in the most brutal, horrific, gory ways, and they have to try to figure out how to stop these spirits, basically try to figure out who was the one responsible for the murders and why, and stop that spirit so all the other spirits could, find peace. But the problem is, apparently, a lot of majority of the spirits there aren't from the massacre. Yeah, there's the ones from the massacre, but a lot of the spirits that are there, that make up the majority, are actually people who somehow fell into this pocket dimension as well and got killed there. Now, apparently the pocket dimension that they're in slowly drives you insane. It slowly drives you to the point of insanity, to the point where the evil spirits, like the original evil spirits that were there originally, could mentally manipulate you to kill others. So basically, they're not only are they getting hunted down one by one by the spirits, but they're also slowly turning on each other as they completely lose their minds. So basically, they have to try to figure out the mystery of who murdered them, and try to put that, vanquish that spirit, and then just lift the curse. This series is not for the faint of heart. It's very brutal, very gory, very unapologetically just blood, basically a gore fest. It's very cool. Anyone who likes a good sort of like supernatural mystery and a good just overall just gore fest definitely will love this series. Although, heads up, this does not have a dubbed version, so it's only in Japanese. There are English subtitles, but if you're okay with having subtitles up, if you're okay with reading subtitles, then, that won't be a problem. But, I know some people don't like to have to read subtitles, but if you're okay with that, you'll definitely have a good time with this. Alright, number 3. Number 3 is a classic, the original Scooby-Doo. Now, I'm gonna throw in all the first couple of versions of the show: Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? The new Scooby-Doo movies, the Scooby-Doo show, Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, the new Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo show, and the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. All those original first couple of series are legendary. What could be said that hasn't been said about this already? Just a very good show. Now, I grew up with reruns of the original series, and I still love it. It holds up very, very well. Yeah, there's some stuff that's a bit obvious, certain villains that are like, oh, it has to be that person, underneath the mask. But, other than that, it's still good. The art style still holds up very, very well. The characters are still very memorable, and of course Shaggy is still my favorite. He has like the best quotes of the entire series. Like, it doesn't matter which version of the show, he always has the best quotes. One of my favorites is in the episode, the Redbeard's Ghost episode. he somehow just finds out the code of the secret cave, basically the entrance code. Is like, what's the password? And Shaggy is just like, how about yo ho ho and what was it again? Oh, yo ho ho and a liverwurst out of mode or something like that, and it just opens. Basically, he just sort of like guessed, and it was, a lot of the stuff he says is food related because obviously he's a food nut. He eats constantly. So it's just funny how, like, the one thing he thinks of is food related, and it happens to be the password. I just find that to be hysterical. I laugh every single time in that scene. But yeah, just a really, really amazing, legendary show that still holds up. All right, number two. Number two, of course, is Batman the Animated Series. Yeah, I already talked about this at length in my first video of TV shows I talked about. Yeah, still holds up. The only issue I have is them kind of being worried and trying to censor the blood. Batman does get cut in one episode, and that was the very first episode, and you could see, the blood running down his face, and that's the only time they show blood, which is kind of odd considering this was, yeah, sure, it was an animated TV show, but it was for a more mature audience than, say, like something like Spider-Man, the animated series, or even X-Men or whatever, or maybe not X-Men, but maybe Spider-Man is slightly younger audience, but this is for a more mature audience, yet at the same time, they were still worried about, we can't show gore, or we can't show even the slightest bit of blood or anything, but whatever. I mean, besides that criticism and the criticism of the last season being horribly animated and horribly designed, everything else stands up, except, despite those two complaints I have. What can I say? The definitive version of Batman, in my opinion, and the second definitive version of the Joker. Yeah, awesome series. Also, really need to get the soundtrack to the show. The soundtrack is stellar. Of course, number one, my favorite animated show of all time is Metalocalypse. Yeah, I mean, a show about a hilarious, awesome show about an amazing metal band. What can I say? This one again is one of the ones I already mentioned. I already talked about at length in my other video, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But yeah, the characters are awesome. They're all funny. They're all hilarious. I would have to say my favorite character is a tie between Toki and Nathan. Yeah. Also, this show has the best soundtrack to any show of all time. The three Death Clock albums, which I own. I'm not going to get out the vinyl version, mainly because it's sort of wedged in that shelf, and I don't want to bother. But I have the CD versions right here. But yeah, best soundtrack to any TV show ever. Also, I heard that there's going to be a movie to finish off the story of the series, and hopefully that does happen. There was an announcement that it was going to happen, that it's happening, but that was like, I don't know, a year ago now, and there hasn't been any news since then. So hopefully that movie does still happen, although I'm worried since there hasn't been any news in a while, it might not happen, but who knows? Hopefully it does. But yeah, Metalocalypse is my favorite TV show, my favorite animated TV show. Yeah, it's my favorite animated TV show of all time and my favorite TV show of all time in general. Alright. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.